Okay, good morning, everyone. I can see that some people are joining. If you can hear me and if you can see the screen, which is the most important element, if you could use the chat box and type something in the chat, just to make sure that the chat works as well, then we would appreciate it. And we'll be starting. Good morning, Yolanda. Yes, so the chat works. Nice to have you with us. Hi, Maciej. Good. Steven, working this side. Good morning, Galeni. So the people are joining, great. Hope you're enjoying your beautiful weather as it is now, no matter whether it's clouds or snow or sun. Hope you are trying to enjoy it a bit. Hi, Daniela. Good morning, Joanna. Good morning, Ruben. Okay, so we'll wait 1 minute extra for the latecomers, and then we'll move on.
Morning, everybody. I'd love to know where you are. We've got someone said they're in Turkey. We've got Bangalore. Where is everybody else? Let us know in the chat.
Poland, Vietnam. Okay. We've just had a conversation that this online reality, this is the reality without borders and without the limitations. So we can meet with Athens, Iran. Okay. So I think it's a good time to start. My name is Bartłomiej Janiak, and we've got Lottie Harrison with us. And welcome to the Teacher Training Academy 2023. And this is the first and opening session. So the session starts today, and it will last, the whole academy will last the whole year. So there is an official website for the Teacher Training Academy. And the next slide, please. And on this website, you will find the agenda. So you'll find the agenda with all the sessions. So there are 10 sessions throughout the year. They are broadcast twice a year. Of course, the sessions are recorded. So we'll place the recordings so that you could see it again. So you can decide whether it's the morning session or the evening session. There are two strands. One is called the computer-based test masters, as it's today. So this trend is to familiarize yourself with the computer-based testing, Pearson English International Certificate. And there are also teaching experts. So these sessions are dedicated to those who want to enhance their teaching skills within the teaching reality, just to introduce some elements. And we'll cover things like the growth mindset, mental simulation, self-efficacy, the stress within the classroom and the exam reality. So feel free to join the sessions and register for them. The next slide. Okay, so those who attend either the computer-based test masters and the test experts, you will get a Credly badge. So it's a kind of digital credential that you can use in your digital resume, as a digital email signature, or you can share it within the social media. So this will happen by the end of the academy. And for those who attend the 7 sessions all together, by the end, when we finish the academy, for those who attend the 7 sessions, we'll share with you the 10 readiness tests and the 10 level tests at your disposal. So you could experiment with these tools within your teaching reality, and this will happen by the end. So I think it's worth attending the sessions for the knowledge and for the gift pack, of course. Okay, the next one. And today in the morning, I shared with all the registrants via email the digital notebook. It will be added to the Academy website today. So in this digital notebook, you will have the name of the session, the abstract. You'll have a place to put your takeaway notes. So this is editable, so we could put the text here. We also designed optional homework for every session, and Lottie will address her homework within the session. So feel free to experiment with this homework and just test it out in the reality. And every page finishes with a question. Sometimes it's quite provocative questions. Sometimes the question is designed to to show off a different perspective. So feel free to use it just to offer some additional exposure to different opportunities as you go by within the academy. And you will also get from me today or tomorrow a survey link where you could share the feedback once the webinar is over. And once you get it, there is a button there, like click on the next page, and you'll be able to download the certificate, which is editable. So it means you can put your name, and you'll be able to download the agenda of the All Academy as well. So you'll get a link from me once the webinar, the first webinar, is over. And okay, Lottie, the over to you. I'm really glad that I'm doing only a few minutes of talking, as you can hear my voice. So I'm really glad that Lottie will take over. So I hope you enjoyed the session. Feel free to use the chat, stay with us, and just enjoy the academy.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. I'm Lottie. I've been working at Pearson for a couple of years now. Before that, I was a teacher and teacher trainer for about 16 years, working in lots of different countries. Actually, none of the countries that you've mentioned in the chat, but Spain, that was one. But so teaching background that I'm now bringing into the testing world. So what we're going to do today is we will have a look at Pearson English International Certificate. And have a look at how it differs when the test is taken online. Now, sorry, 1 second. So on the agenda today, I'll give you a quick introduction to the test and how it is structured, who it's aimed at, what it's testing for the students. We'll have a look at the test design and the development process. So everything that happens in the background before the test reaches you and your students. Then we will go through the different question types in the test, and we'll have a think about how the online or the computer-based environment changes the way that students might do these questions, the advantages of doing it computer-based as well. We'll have a look at the results process, a little bit of the background as to what happens between the end of the test taker taking the test and then receiving their results. And we'll have a look at the interactive score report. And there should be some time at the end for some questions. Now, before we get started, what I'd like you to do in the chat box, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being absolutely nothing, 5 being expert, what do you know about Pearson English International Certificate at the moment? So 1, nothing. Okay, we've got 1s. Okay, some 4s and some 2s. So hopefully the 1s and the 2s, we can share some information with you today. We've got a few 4s. Hopefully there'll still be it's always good to have a refresher. We're going to interact with some of the question types as well. So you might have a chance to rethink how we do those. We've got a nice range, which is fantastic. We'll revisit this question at the end, and hopefully we will see some higher numbers all round. Okay, and maybe the 5s, we can bump you up to a 6. So let's start with a brief overview of the test itself. So Pearson English International Certificate, I'm going to call it International Certificate from now on. It's computer-based, as you know, and it certifies students at all 6 levels of the CEFR. Okay, so from A1 up to C2, and there's a different test for each of those levels. And it's focused on general English. Okay. Now, it's regulated by Ofqual in the UK. If you haven't heard of that, Ofqual just means official qualification. It's a governmental body in the UK, and it means that we go through rigorous audits and rigorous checks to make sure that the assessment is up to standard, does what it says it does when it's launched and throughout its lifetime. Okay, so you know that this is backed up by a lot of standardization work, quality checks to make sure that we're giving you the best assessment possible. Now, one of the features of International Certificate is that all 4 skills are tested in a single session. Now, you know, in some of the other proficiency tests that students can take, they might have their speaking session in a different time of day or on a different day completely. We integrate everything into one session, so less stress for the test takers, which is good. It's on demand as well, so they can take it in the test center. In some cases, they can take it at home if they've got the right setup, they've got the right headset. It just gives their students a little bit more flexibility. Now, the paper-based version of this test has been around for quite a while, and in terms of a qualification, paper-based and the computer-based test are the same test, okay? It's the same qualification. But what we haven't done in creating the computer-based test is just put the paper-based test onto a screen, okay? We have a different mode, it's a different environment when you take a test online. So we've got slightly different questions, and we've got some advantages that they wouldn't have in the paper-based test. So we'll see, if you're familiar with the paper-based test, it'll be good to look out for those similarities and those differences as we go through the item types or the questions today in the session. Now, the test development process, from getting the initial ideas together at the beginning in the needs analysis, all the way to delivery at the end, is quite a long and detailed process to make sure that we are giving you the best possible test at every step of the way. So the first thing that we do is a needs analysis. Now, as teachers, we all know what that is. We want to find out what the needs of our audience are and how we can address those needs. So before Pearson, before International Certificate Computer-Based was put together, before the questions were chosen, lots of consultation happened with people like you. Okay, people who ran institutions, teachers, to find out what kind of assessment would be best for you and for your students. Okay, and all that information was gathered together and turned into, as you can see, the test and item specification. Okay, now these documents determine the structure of the test overall. They write down everything from the needs analysis: who's the audience, what do they want to be tested on, okay? And they set out the parameters for the test. Then what we need to do is to recruit and train item writers. Now, we have a large pool of item writers who are very experienced. Each time we go over the test specifications again, reminding them of the details, reminding them of the parameters of the questions, to make sure that they are always producing the best quality questions for the test. Now, the item writing process has a lot of back and forth. And that means that there's lots of feedback on the questions before they're finalized. They get written and then they get some feedback. We do some peer review and then there's some more feedback. Then we do content review and then we bring it to internal review. So before an item is finalized, before we say, yes, we're going to put this in the test, it has been through, I'd say probably maybe 8 different people from different parts of the world have looked at the question, compared it to the specifications, decided whether it's of the highest quality possible, whether it's fair and valid for the test and for the level of the test as well. Okay. Once we finalize these questions, then we start creating the audio and the graphics to go with them, and then everything gets published into a test. The scoring gets calibrated and put together, and then we get to delivery. Okay, so it's quite a long and detailed process, but that means that we've got quality at every stage. Now, throughout this process, we have some guiding principles. I'm not going to talk through all of these this morning, but there's just a few I want to pick up on. So communicative is a really important part of the test for us. We want to make sure that the questions the test takers are answering reflect communicative language skills, that they reflect the language skills they would use in real life, what we're teaching them, what we're preparing them for in the classroom. Okay. Because of that, if we just move across the top here, because of that, a lot of our question types, as you'll see when we get to them, are integrated skills. So quite often in English language tests, you might have a paper or a set of questions that students take, and it's only focused on writing. Okay. What we feel at Pearson is that whilst obviously that is useful, there are times in life where we just write. There are also a lot of times where we read something and then write, or we hear something and then write. And so we integrate the skills into question types. This also means that we can get more information from individual questions, which also means that we can make the test a little bit shorter and put it into one session, because we're gathering so much more information from one question than if it were just focused on a single skill. Now, if we just move down here to the bottom left, this has an impact on washback. I'm sure some of you are familiar with this, but just as a quick introduction for those of you who aren't, washback is a testing consideration, and it essentially translates as the effect that the test has on learning. Okay, what's the backward impact that the test makes on learning? And what we want to do with international certificate is to minimize the impact that the test has on learning. We want learning in the classrooms, you and your students, to be all about getting better at using the language, getting more proficient with the language in the most natural, communicative, authentic way possible. So if we create a test that requires students to use the language in different ways than they would be, it's going to create an impact. It's going to create lots of need for test preparation. We want to minimize the need for test preparation by doing questions, having questions that students would already be doing by using English communicatively. Okay, hopefully that will become a little bit clearer as we look at the questions as well. Now, bottom right is the last one we're just going to touch on here. But if you've got questions about any of the others, do pop them in the chat or in the Q&A and we can come back to them. Bottom right here is to avoid bias. Okay, now this is core to what we do at Pearson and our test development principles. We want to make sure that every test taker, regardless of where they're from, and we've seen from the chat box today that we've got teachers from all over the place. So your students are from all around the world as well. We want to make sure that none of them will be favored over others or disadvantaged over others because of the content type. It needs to be completely free and only focus on testing English language. And we also want to make sure that there's no sort of cultural sensitivities that go into the test, that everybody is treated fairly by the content and experiences the content in the same way as much as possible. And we also want to make sure that the content reflects the variety, the wonderful variety of test takers that we have taking this computer-based test. Okay, so that's something that we take very seriously. We train our item writers on, making sure that we are putting out a truly global product that is suitable for everybody. Okay, so test structure then. There's two sections in the test. Section 1 is primarily focused on speaking and listening. Section 2, reading and writing. Okay, it doesn't mean there will be no listening in section 2, okay, but these are the main skills that are being targeted. And I've got the questions today in the order of the test, so you'll see how it progresses. There's an optional 10-minute break in between. One of the good things about computer-based test is that you can, if they want to, skip their break, which I wouldn't advise. It's always good to refresh your mind and also have a stretch, rest your eyes a little bit. But they can take 8 minutes of the break, 6 minutes of the break if they want to. There's a bit of flexibility there. Now we have 14 question types, which we'll go through today. There's 11 per test. You'll see as we go through the questions that there are slightly different versions depending on the level. Okay, the main differences are at the A levels. We have a lot more images, a lot more graphics to lighten that linguistic load on the students. Okay, so that we are testing them fairly for the level of proficiency. Now, as with any test, we've got clear instructions throughout the test. These are graded for the level, and they're given direction on how to use the voice recorder boxes. And it's designed in a way that you don't need to be very computer proficient in order to take the test, that your computer skills are not being tested. Okay, so that's another part of the construct of the test that we have focused on, that we're making sure it really is focusing on English language proficiency, not your computer skills. Okay, beforehand, I think most of you are aware that we have something called the readiness test, which students can take in preparation for international certificate to find out whether they're ready for B1 yet, whether they're ready for B2, and get some feedback on their skills. All right, now let's have a quick look at some of the features of the online test, and then we'll get on to the questions themselves. Now, I've picked out these features because they are perhaps the main ones where a computer-based test will differ from the paper-based test. Now, timers. We all know as teachers, timing doesn't just happen by magic. We need to keep an eye on a clock. In assessments, timing can be important to make sure you finish. And timers are inbuilt into the test. So if they're, for example, in the writing questions, they have 9 or 10 minutes, depending on their level, that timer will be in the top right-hand corner of the screen for them. Okay, so they don't need to find the clock in the room. They don't need to be looking up and checking. They don't need to think, okay, I've started at 6:01. I need to move on to the next question. That stress is gone. The timer is there. They just need to reference that, okay? It's nice and visible for them, helps them keep pace, helps them keep focused as well. Now, we also have an inbuilt notebook to the test as well. And internally in Pearson, we take the test ourselves quite a lot. And I find the notebook particularly useful when we do the longer listenings. Okay, so it can be, the students will find the notebook in the top left of the screen. They can open it up when the audio starts, take some notes on keywords. Okay, they're not going to have time to write everything down. Picking out keywords, though, is a great language skill to practice with them. It can help them listen, and it will help them remember what they've heard for the subsequent questions. One important thing to note, though, it doesn't save from screen to screen. Okay, and this is because we don't want to give an advantage to anybody carrying that language forward. Okay, but the process of picking out those keywords, writing them down, is going to reinforce them in their memory. I know it definitely helps me. And last of all, and you'll see this when we get to the writing questions towards the end of the test, is that we have built in automatic word counts. So we've all seen students sat in exams going, I need to write 100 words. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not a useful use of their time, is it? So we've got the word count at the bottom, and it will automatically count as they're typing. So that's an easy reference for them. And we've also built in a copy, cut and paste tools. This can be quite useful when they get to the longer writing section. Maybe they look at it afterwards, they want to do a bit of rearranging, maybe flip some sentences. They've decided the structure could be better another way around. They don't need to rewrite it. They don't need to, it's one of the advantages of the computer-based environment, and we're trying to harness that as well. They can focus on the content, rearrange things afterwards if necessary. Okay, so lots of additional benefits there that you don't necessarily get with pen and paper. All right, now let's move on to the questions themselves. It's the juicy bit. Now, before we do, at the beginning, it was mentioned about the homework, the optional homework that is in the interactive notebook that you've all been sent. Now, the homework for this session is to pick out a question that you think your students will be least familiar with. Okay, the one that you might want to really find something for in your course books or design for your students to practice this one, because it's a little bit different from the things that they are used to in assessment. So as we're going through these question types, I want you to pick out the question. Doesn't mean you have to do the homework, but it's just a thought process. Which is the question your students will be least familiar with? Okay, and we'll loop back to that at the end and find out which one it is. Okay, now the first question. Before we get into it, if you just have a look top left in the screen here, As we go through, you will see which level these item types are designed for. Okay, in most cases, it is for all levels, and we vary the content of the question itself to suit A2, B2. Okay, but you'll see as well, top left, when we get to the question types, which are solely for A1 and A2, and I'll point those out as well when we get there. So the first item, creaky chair this morning. The first item on every test is a read aloud. Okay, students are given a short text sentence, a couple of sentences depending on the level, and they must they're given 25 seconds to prepare. You can see this is always up on the screen in terms of the instructions. They're given some time to prepare, to read it, to practice if they want, and then some time to read the sentence out loud. Okay. When it's time for them to read it, the audio recorder in the center of the screen will open automatically. Okay, so they don't have to count 25 seconds. They don't have to press record on it. Okay, it will happen automatically. So they can focus on the content. Now, this item type is focusing on, it's testing a little bit of their reading. Okay, they've had to read the text, and also their speaking, looking at pronunciation, fluency, and whether their ability to pronounce the words accurately is also going to reflect how much they've understood the sentence as well. So lots going on here. Okay. Now the next question type is a listen and repeat. Now we're going to have a go at this one. None of you have your microphones on, so don't worry, nobody can hear you unless you're in a room with somebody. All right, so I'm going to play the audio exactly as the students would experience it. And what I'd like you to do is to repeat the sentence after you've heard it. Everybody ready? Gonna take that as a yes. Here we go. Thank you. Yes, here we go.
My hands are very cold today.
So everyone's had a go at saying that. My hands are very cold today. So what we're testing here is listening comprehension at the word and the sentence level. Yep, that's the sentence, Raz. Well done. Okay. It's testing pronunciation and fluency. The audio, the recorder box will open automatically and they will say the sentence, my hands are very cold today. Okay. It will test whether they've heard the words correctly and understood them in order to repeat them. Now, quite often we get questions about this item type. We get questions about whether it's just testing memory or whether it's really testing language proficiency. Now, what I'd like you to do very briefly is think of a language that you know nothing about. You have no knowledge of the sounds of the language, of the grammar, the vocabulary. If somebody in that language said to you the sentence, my hands are very cold today, and you had to immediately repeat it back, you'd struggle, right? It would be very difficult to repeat it accurately with absolutely no knowledge of the language whatsoever. We're able to repeat it. My hands are very cold today. Students are able to repeat it in English because they understand the words, they recognize the vocabulary, the structure of the sentence. So it is actually, surprisingly, sometimes quite a very accurate test of their understanding of English and their speaking proficiency. All right. Now, next question. This is quite a familiar one. It's used a lot in English language assessment. So at every level, A1 to C2, students are given an image, they're given some time to prepare, and then they need to describe what they see. All right. At the lower levels, we tend to use illustrations like this one so that we can control the language that we're eliciting from them. At the higher levels, much more authentic photographs, something a bit freer, something that requires a little bit of lateral thinking to challenge the higher levels, especially at C1 and C2. So this is sort of the main item for extended speech in this one, something longer, more involved than the listen and repeat and the read aloud that we've already seen, testing the accuracy of their grammar, pronunciation, stress, also looking at their choice of words that they've used to describe the image. Okay, and next up, at every level again, we have listen to the conversation. So students are hear a short conversation between two speakers, and then they're asked a question. Okay, so a comprehension question on the text. All right, we're going to have a go at this one. I'll play the recording and I'd like you to put your answers in the chat box. Here we go.
Hello, do you sell envelopes? I need to post this letter.
We do, yes. Do you need any stamps as well?
Thanks, but I've already got one.
What does the woman want to buy?
Good. Oh, some stamps in there. Envelopes, Stephen. Good. That's the right answer. Envelopes, Maria. Yep. Anastasia. Good. Exactly. She wants to buy envelopes. This is one of the item types where it might be useful for students to use the notebook. Okay, they can be writing down keywords to help them hear, and then they get the question afterwards. Good. Envelopes. Well done. Now, the next one in this version, as you can see top left there, is for A1 and A2. Okay, so similar to the listening to the conversation, students will hear a passage. In this case, it's usually one speaker, and then they will get 3 questions afterwards. Okay. Stephen's just asked a good question, actually, they want to come to. They're giving a sentence, or the answer can just be something short. It can just be short. So in that case, they can just say envelopes. Okay, they want some envelopes. She asked for envelopes. Okay, as long as the word envelopes is in there, then they'll get the point. All right, so that's a really useful thing to remember is that key word in the listen to the conversation. Now for passage comprehension, let's have a go at A1, A2. I'm going to play the passage for you, and then we'll have a look at the answer options. Here we go.
I'd like an orange juice with ice, please. To start, I think I'll have a sandwich with egg. No, wait. I'll have a cheese one with tomato. After, I'd like some fresh fruit and ice cream.
What is the man doing?
Answers in the chat box. Is it picture A at the top, picture B in the middle, C at the bottom? Exactly. Everyone's gone for A, ordering. Good. So we've got a nice global question for the test takers here. And in this case, because we're at A1, A2, we want them to choose a picture. Okay, we're not going to put more linguistic load on them. They've got to hold that conversation of the ordering in their mind. In this case, students would then go on to get 2 further questions about the ordering passage that they've heard. All right, and again, 3 pictures for them to choose the correct one from. Okay. Now, at the higher levels, at B1 to C2, similar structure. They have the first screen where they hear the passage, and then on the next screen, it's going to be a little bit different. We're not going to give them pictures to choose from at B1 to C2. We want to give them a little bit more challenge. So let's have a look, and then we'll see how the questions themselves change for this level. So here's the passage.
Pauline went to the theater with her sister to see a musical called Bright Lights. In the interval, they went to buy ice cream, and while they were standing in the queue, they heard someone say, "Hello, Pauline." It was an old school friend who Pauline hadn't seen for a very long time. Pauline was very happy to see her.
Who went to the theatre with Pauline?
Answers in the chat. Good, Eleni. Yes, Jang. Good, her sister. Excellent, good. Again, this is a really useful one where students can get the notebook out whilst they're listening, help them remember some of that key information. Okay, now you can see here, we don't have images for them to choose from. They will give a spoken response to the question. Okay, so they'll hear the question and give a spoken response. And what you've all put in the chat box, like with the listen to the conversation, would be sufficient. Her sister, sister. Okay, she went with her sister. Okay, as long as that key answer, sister, is in there, they've got it. And again, two further questions on the passage from there. Okay. Now, next up, we have a good old dictation. Fell out of fashion for a while, but really we use this set of skills quite a lot in our day-to-day life. If somebody's giving us instructions, someone's giving us directions for somewhere, we might, if we're in a lecture or a lesson at school, university, we listen to things and we take notes quite a lot. Okay, so this is a great skill to test for listening and writing. Okay. Yes, Maria, sometimes students don't like it, you're right. Now, one thing to reassure them about with this is that it is graded to their level. So the A1 students are only going to get a short A1 level sentence. The C2 students, again, it's going to be a bit more challenging in terms of the vocabulary and grammar structure, but it's not going to be very, very long because they still need to hold the sentence that they've heard in their memory. So at every level, it will only be sentence level dictation. Okay, so let's have a go. Everybody typing at the ready. This is another thing to practice with your students. As it's computer based, they will do the dictation using the keyboard. Okay, so if it's something they're not used to, worth practicing before they take the test. Okay, everybody, fingers at the ready. I'm going to play the audio, and you can see that they can do it concurrently. As they listen, they can be typing. They don't need to wait for it to finish. Okay, ready? Here we go. Whoop.
I cannot find my glasses.
Good, Anastasia got in there first. Everyone's got it perfectly. Good. Can't see any full stops though. Okay, that's another thing to remind your students of, is to make sure they've got the punctuation correct in there as well. So looking for an accurate sentence, but as well as the content of the sentence. Great. One thing to note, quite often when we practice listening with our students, quite often in some tests, they hear listenings more than once. Okay, and that is a great thing to practice with students because it can help them to decode further, recognize more the second time around, focus on different information. Okay, because we're seeking communicative, authentic texts, authentic questions, sorry, in the test, students will only ever hear the listenings once and they won't have the option to play them again. Okay, so this creates much more authentic question types, but it's important for students to know so they don't have the expectation of a second chance. They can stay focused, listen carefully, and get their question and their answer down into the computer. Okay. Now, next up, this item, hotspots, is the final item of section 1 of the test. Okay. We do this type for A1 to C2, and hint, you might find it might be a useful one for your homework task. This might be the one that they're least familiar with, okay? I know when I looked at this item type for the first time as a teacher, it wasn't really something that was coming up in course books, but the benefits of it, the actual task type itself, is one of my favorites. So let me explain how it works and then we'll have a go. As you can see, students will hear a recording and they also have a text on the screen. The recording and the text are the same, apart from some key words. Now, as students are listening, they need to click on the keywords in the written text that are different. Okay, they're different from what they hear. When they do that, the words that they have selected will go yellow. Okay, and that's just to show them which ones they have selected. Okay, so they can see it clearly. Now, I haven't got that functionality in the presentation today, but what I'd like you to do, I'm going to play the audio. I want you to read along, and every time you see a key word that's different, just imagine clicking on it, okay? Just as the students would do. All right, here we go. Let's try hotspots.
Sam is a young man. He lives in a small house in a big city. Every day he goes to work by bus. He works in a restaurant. In the evening, he likes to play football in the garden with his friends.
Good. Some of you are adding to the chat box the differences you saw. Good. Or heard as well. Heard and saw together. It's that integration of skills there. So Sam is a young boy. No, Sam is a young man. Okay. Now, important things to, here we found 5 differences. Okay. It will always be 5 differences. What level do you think this text is for? A1, B2, C2, A1, Agnieszka says, A1. Okay, good, exactly. So we've got at the higher levels, yeah, some people are going for A2. I think that's fair. For a low A2, a high A1, we've got words like restaurant. Depending on the courses you use, it's sort of debatable on which side of the fence that word sits. Good. So one thing to note with this is that at the higher levels, obviously the words that they hear and see are going to be much more complex. They'll be much closer in terms of their possible pronunciation to add that level of challenge for the higher levels. Okay. Also, the words will always make sense. We're never going to put something like Sam is a young tree. Okay, that's too obvious. They'll see it before they've even heard the audio. They will make grammatical sense in the written version and the audio version. So they really need to pay attention to find where those differences lie. Okay. So after this one, students have the opportunity to 10-minute break, stretch a little bit, rest their eyes, refresh before they move on to the reading and writing section, which we will go straight into now. Now, this first question type for the reading and writing section 2, this version, as you can see at the top left, is for A1 and A2. The images there, again, are just lightening that cognitive load, that linguistic load on the lower levels. Okay, so they've got a question, they've got a short text and a question, and they need to choose the right picture. Okay, so if the top picture is A, next down it's B, C, what's the answer to this one? Good, Eleni got in there, Stephen, good, Serkan, exactly, it's A. Okay, so this is testing their understanding of short messages, short notes, pieces of writing. It might be about food that they've ordered, might be about a timetable, when they're doing something. Okay, we'll keep the pictures with enough distraction to provide challenge, but so that they can clearly see which is the correct picture if they've understood the text correctly. Now, at the higher levels, we ask them to read a text, a much longer text, and to write their answers. Okay, so a little bit more linguistic load for those higher levels to provide challenge. Now, top tip on this one at the bottom, the instructions for this one will vary in order to tell the test takers what type of text they're going to read. So in this case, you can see it says read a press release. It might say read an article, read a blog, okay? And it just gives them a little bit of a gateway for expectations into the text, help them understand what they're reading as soon as possible. Now, what I'd like you to do is have a go at question number 1. What job is available? Answers in the chat, please. Good, Sir Cam. We've got delivery assistant. Excellent. Good, Lydia. Exactly. Food delivery assistant. Excellent. Now, I'm sure we're going to get a question similar to Stephen's when we were talking about the listen to the conversation. How should they structure their answers? Now, those of you who would have noticed in the instruction, it says use no more at the top of the screen, use no more than 3 words for each answer. Okay, so those of you who put delivery assistant, food delivery assistant, full marks. All right. So again, we're not looking so much at their ability to structure a sentence. The job that is available is a food delivery assistant. All we need is to find that they've found the right information. They've understood the question. They've understood the text. Food delivery assistant is perfectly sufficient. Okay, it's the perfect answer in this case. So short answers here so that students can just pick out that information that they need. Okay. Next up, gap fill. Okay, at every level, they're given the options for the answers in this case. We're not expecting students to pluck the word from their mind for this. They're given some options. It's testing, looking at grammatical relationships, at collocations, and as well as their global understanding of the short message, a note, or a short piece of writing. Okay, so stairs closed. Thank you. Everybody's got there before me. Use the elevator to go to the 2nd floor. Great. Okay, so we know stairs is not the right answer because it has said stairs closed. Okay, so it's a distractor there. It's in part of the text. And gates aren't going to get you anywhere. Okay, good. Yes, lift is also another option, Nurana, but in this case, they'd have to choose the word that's on the screen. Okay, because they're not writing in their own answers. But yes, lift for a British variation there. Good. Okay, we've got 2 more question types. So the students are almost at the end of the text. I've lost my test. There we go. Okay, so passage recall. Now, this is one we're going to have a go at to an extent. In this question type, the students read the passage that you see on the screen here, and they get 30 seconds to read it. Okay, at the higher levels, they'll get a little bit more time because it will be a slightly longer text. Okay, then the text will disappear. All right, let me just show you what it looks like. And they'll need to rewrite the text. Now, this is not a memory test. Okay, we don't want students to produce this text verbatim, word for word. Okay, that's not what we're asking. We're looking for them to communicate the same meaning. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is read that first sentence. Mary loves to take photographs. Now, some students might remember that sentence as the opening sentence. Mary loves to take photographs. And if they write that in, no problem at all. If they can't remember the exact sentence, but they know that Mary loves to take photographs, they've got that meaning. In the chat box, how else could we express Mary loves to take photographs? What are the alternatives? Nice, keen on Anastasia. Exactly. This would be a correct answer. Any other options? How else can we express the same meaning? Slightly different grammar. Any options? Good. She likes taking photographs. She's into taking photographs. Good. The stronger students can show off a little bit with some of their colloquial English. She's into something. Good. So these options are going to be correct because what we're looking for is that global understanding. Lovely. Fond of. It's her hobby. Great. Okay. So they've got the text in their minds and they've got a chance to write it out. Okay, you can see here, this is where they've got the word count. Word count here, there's no minimum or maximum in the passage recall item, but it can be useful for them to see. They can also cut, copy and paste if they want to rearrange their text a little bit once they've finalized it. All right, so that's quite a useful, I think the cut, cut and copy and paste could be quite useful here for students. Okay, so it's very important when you practice and prepare your students for this one, you don't want them to try and remember word for word the entire passage. Okay, we want to see what sentence structures they have, what word order they use, what connectors they want to use in order to express the same story. Okay, it's always structured as a story, which will help make it much easier for students to remember and recall what they've read as well. Okay, final item. Now we've got two variations on this one. This is our more open-ended, extended writing to finish off the test. Students have warmed up, they've done their speaking and reading, they've activated all that English in their mind. So we usually stick the longer writing at the end, like in a lot of tests. At the lower level, as you can see here, this is for A1 and A2. Again, to lighten that linguistic challenge on them, they're given an image, usually an illustration, not always though, but something that is going to elicit language that is appropriate for their level. Okay, in this case, we have an image. They've got 9 minutes. You can see the timing is there. The timer will be on the screen as well, so they've got no doubt about when they need to finish. They must write at least 25 words. It's not too much of a big ask, is it? Especially at A2, we want to see what they can do. So one thing to note here, at least 25 words. Let's put the emphasis on at least, okay? So that's the minimum they're going for. A lot of students will give much more information than that, okay? They've got the word count, bottom left, and they've got the options to cut, copy, and paste if they want to rearrange their text afterwards, okay? At the higher levels, a bit more of a traditional sort of mini essay prompt, okay? In this one, it's about taking holidays to unusual destinations, and they need to give their opinion on these types of places. So you can see at these higher levels, now the timing has changed. They've got 10 minutes to write it, and they must write at least 100 words, much longer. Okay, so we're expecting much more of these students. Again, they've got the word count, they've got the option for cut, copy, and paste. All right. Anything was there? I think that was everything I was going to say about this one. One thing to note, though, that with these question prompts, they're not going to be asked about topics that they might not have information about. Okay, so Eleni's asked, is it always an opinion essay? It's not. It might be weighing up a for and against. It might be giving an opinion. It might be exploring ideas on something, but it's always going to be something that's accessible to all learners, regardless of background, regardless of their other knowledge. Okay. So that then, once they've written that and they've finalized it, you're welcome, Eleni. Once they've done that, they've reviewed it. As always, we want them to check and edit their text. Test is done. Phew. Lucky them. Okay, so we've looked at all 14 question types now, and I'd like to know for your homework, if you decide to do it, if you choose to accept the challenge, which item type did you choose as the ones that your students might be least familiar with? Which would be the one that you want to make sure they definitely get practice of before the test? Yeah, Jang's gone for passage recall. I think that's a really good one, because I think it would be possible for a lot of students to try and write it exactly as they read it. And, you know, letting them know that they need to express it with their language is going to be really useful practice for them. Good. Lots of you going for passage recall. Dictation, agreed. I think it's a useful skill to practice again. I think there was another one there. Yes, Maciek has gone for the listen and repeat. I think that's a good one too, again, because it's something that doesn't necessarily come up in the classroom so much, but it is a skill that we use in language. Okay, quite often we hear something on the telly, we hear something on the news, we go and tell somebody else about it. So there's lots of interesting ways that you can practice these. Good. And Katerina has pointed out as well that the typing for the dictation is going to be something that you want to practice with your students. Okay, fantastic. All right. There's a link. Matt Check's asking about exercises in Speak Out. Now, I'll show you in the score report how we might link to that. I don't have an activity from Speak Out myself, but you could probably take any sentence from the course book and get them to close their books, or they pick a sentence, tell it to their partner in the classroom, and their partner has to write it down. So even if there isn't an exact exercise in the course book you're using, Speak Out or Roadmap, whatever it might be, there is a way that you could use the course book to pick out sentences that you could practice for listen and repeat, for dictation, get them in pairs, bringing that course book off the page a little bit. Now, when they finish the test takers, you as their teachers obviously want them to get their results, find out how they've done. So this is just a brief explanation of what happens in the moment between them finishing the test and them getting their results. And then we'll have a look at the score report. Now, the scoring of the test is quick because computer-based. It can turn around. We don't have to post a piece of paper somewhere for someone to sit down and mark it all. Okay, it's all happening in the system much faster. One thing to note with the scoring is that each item type is given an equal weighting and feeds into the overall score. On the score report, we give an indication of their CEFR level of the 4 skills for speaking, writing, reading, and listening. But that overall is a summary of their performance on every item type. Okay, so that's how the scoring is structured. A little bit different from some assessments, so worth noting. Now, answers where it's right or wrong, like the gap fills, for example, are auto-scored. Okay, we've trained an engine to recognize that the right answer has been selected or not. Okay, the open-ended items, such as the describe the image, the short writing task, need a more in-depth approach to the scoring. So if we just have a look onto the right-hand side of the screen, what happens in the beginning with the test is we have human raters looking at the answers of the students, listening to their responses, and they go through they've got detailed descriptors on the levels, and they've been through extensive training, and they do all of the scoring. What we then do is we take all of that data that those human raters have created, and we use it to train machines to replicate the same scoring behavior. Okay. Now, this creates consistency in the scoring. It doesn't matter if your human examiner is tired one day or not listening or focus on something else, the machine is going to give the same result every single time. It's very consistent. It's much faster. It also removes bias. We haven't got that human to human. Even if we're the best intentioned humans, we bring bias to our situations in life. Okay, a machine does not. Okay, so it just makes more consistent, fair scoring in once the engines are in place. Now, this is what students are most eager for. Once all of that scoring has happened in the background, all the information has been put together into a score report for the students. And I love these score reports. And that's not because I'm biased, but as a teacher, I would really want my students to get these score reports. And I'll show you some of the features to explain why. So you can see along the top, you've got the student information, you've got their level of the test they took and their overall score. Okay, so they've got, in this case, 52 out of 100. This is a pass, okay? And then you get a breakdown of their skills. Now, on this first page of the score report, they've got a performance summary. So it's saying, listening at this level, this is what they can do. Now, this is based on the CEFR framework and Pearson's global scale of English. Okay, so it's based on 2 rigorous scales to reflect what the students can do, what level they're at. All right. Now, the second page, and this math check is where you might find the activities you're looking for, although it will be after the test, but for the next time. What we do on this second page is we give students direction for their future learning. So on the first page, we've showed them where they're up to now, what they can do at this stage, what they've shown. Now we want to think about more learning after that. Okay, so for each skill, we give them recommended activities that they could be doing. And as teachers, you can see for a class what you might want to be doing with your class and with individuals. Okay, and then we give some exercises. I'm not sure you can quite see this, but just here it says course mapping. This one is for business partner, and it gives some exercises here. Okay, so this is all underpinned by the Pearson GSE learning objectives. So where a course and an exam item type, sorry, Maria, it is a little bit small. But basically what you've got here in the middle, these courseware exercises, it shows the crossover between the learning objectives of the assessment and the course you might be studying. So you might, Maciek might go with his student score report and select speak out. And then some exercises will pop up that will help them practice these recommended activities. Okay, so it's really directed to the individual's performance and where they might be going next in their learning process. So it just means assessment can sometimes feel like a full stop in learning. You get to the end of year, you take an assessment, you get your results, done. And then you start the next year. But this kind of bridges the gap. It shows them what they can be doing next. Okay, so it integrates the assessment results with their future learning. We don't want them to stop learning, do we? We want them to keep going. And this is a way to help them do that. Okay, I'm just going to open up the Q&A here. I think they're So Jiang asked a question, how do you decide on the minimum amount of words for test takers to write? This will depend on their level. So we've had lots of linguistic experts helping us design the test specifications, thinking experts on the CEFR and the different, what can be expected of students at the different levels. Okay, so the lower levels, we know that perhaps 20 words is going to be enough in that amount of time once they've had a think, once they've been given some time to review their work. Higher levels, we can expect a bit more production from them. So lots of information goes into that. Okay, if there's any other questions, pop them in now. So Nurana has asked about books to prepare for the exam. There are test prep materials on the website. I don't think at this point there are any particular course books geared towards this assessment alone. But again, that goes back to that idea of the washback, okay, of the necessity to really prep your students for this particular test. You've seen the question types. You do want to do some preparation with them, but we want to limit the need to focus on the exam so that you can focus on learning and language proficiency much, much more. Okay, keep the Q&A open. Any other questions coming in? How long are students waiting for the results? That I would need some help answering, actually. I think at the moment, I actually don't know the answer to that one at the moment. Bartek, any ideas how long the wait for results is at the moment? Do you know?
It should be, it's quite fast.
Yeah.
Up to 2 weeks, but we're aiming for several days. So there is a very fast time span.
Yeah, good. Thank you for that. There we go. Arash has asked, if they take the test at home, how do you ensure they're not cheating? Now, in the if they take it at home, they will have an online proctor. So proctor is another word for invigilator. Okay, that person will have the student on the screen. The student will have to take photos of their environment to show that they've got a clear desk, that there's nobody else in the room. And then while they're taking the test, they will be watched by the invigilator. The test taker won't be able to see the invigilator. That could be quite distracting, but the invigilator can see them. They can see whether they start talking to somebody off screen. They can see whether they open a book or not, okay, to make sure that they're taking it and it's an honest attempt. Okay, so that's there's some videos on the YouTube channel that show what the proctor experience is like, and it's really quite interesting. And it just means they can also chat with their invigilator, and the invigilator can chat with them if they suspect that there's cheating going on. Okay.
Just one element, there is also last session in the academy, computer-based test practice, when we address taking the test from home, just all the specification and the things you need to know and the things you need to equip your students with so that they would take the test effectively from the home reality. So this is the last session of the academy.
Fantastic. I'd really recommend that one because it will help students make sure that they prepare themselves at home when you're not there to do the best test that they possibly can. Okay. Any final questions, or shall we wrap it up there? You're welcome, Sula. It's been great to talk to you. It's always very odd. You can see me, I can't see you, but I hope you've gained something from this. Just briefly before you go then, scale of 1 to 5 or 6 if you were at 5 before, how much do you feel like you know about PEIC International Certificate now? Are you still, we've got a 5, 5's great. A 7, I love a 7. Nice, fantastic. And if you still feel you're at a 3 or a 4, as we said, there's lots more sessions to come to help you get to know the test in even more detail. Okay, fantastic. Thanks, everybody. 4's great. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, everybody.